Hello and welcome to this video on the darkest side of electric vehicles, or EVs. EVs are becoming more and more popular around the world, as they promise to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, air pollution, and fuel consumption. Many people believe that EVs are the future of transportation, and that they are much better than conventional vehicles that run on gasoline or diesel. But are EVs really as green and clean as they claim to be? In this video, we will explore the hidden costs and consequences of EVs, and how they may not be as eco-friendly and equitable as they seem. We will cover the following aspects. Battery production, how the mining and processing of raw materials for making batteries causes environmental damage, human rights violations, and geopolitical conflicts. Battery disposal, how the disposal or recycling of batteries poses challenges and risks for the environment and human health. Electricity generation, how the electricity used to charge EVs may come from fossil fuels or other non-renewable sources that emit greenhouse gases and pollutants. Cost, how the high price of EVs makes them unaffordable for many people, especially in developing countries. Infrastructure, how the lack of charging stations, grid capacity, and maintenance facilities limits the availability and convenience of EVs. Incentives, how the subsidies, tax breaks, and regulations that favor EVs may create unfair advantages or disadvantages for different groups of consumers, producers, or workers. By the end of this video, you will have a better understanding of the dark side of EVs, and how to make informed decisions about your transportation choices. So stay tuned and let's get started. Before we dive into the dark side of EVs, let's first understand what EVs are and how they work. EVs are vehicles that use one or more electric motors for propulsion. They can be powered by batteries, fuel cells, or other sources of electricity. There are different types of EVs, such as battery electric vehicles, BEVs, which run solely on batteries that store electricity from external sources. Examples include Tesla Model 3, Nissan Leaf, Chevrolet Bolt, etc. Plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, PHEVs, which use both batteries and internal combustion engines that can run on gasoline or diesel. The batteries can be charged from external sources or from the engine. Examples include Toyota Prius Prime, Ford Fusion Energy, Hyundai Ioniq plug-in hybrid, etc. Hybrid electric vehicles, HEVs, which use both batteries and internal combustion engines that can run on gasoline or diesel. The batteries are charged by the engine or by regenerative braking. Examples include Toyota Prius, Honda Insight, Hyundai Ioniq Hybrid, etc. Fuel cell electric vehicles, FCEVs, which use hydrogen fuel cells that convert hydrogen and oxygen into electricity. The only emission is water vapor. Examples include Toyota Mirai, Hyundai Nexo, Honda Clarity Fuel Cell, etc. EVs have some benefits compared to conventional vehicles, such as lower greenhouse gas emissions. EVs emit less carbon dioxide, CO2, per kilometer than conventional vehicles, especially if they use renewable electricity sources. According to a study by the International Council on Clean Transportation, ICCT, BEVs emit 66% less CO2 than gasoline cars over their lifetime. Lower air pollution. EVs emit less nitrogen oxides, NOx, particulate matter, PM, and other pollutants than conventional vehicles. Lower air pollution. EVs emit less nitrogen oxides, NOx, particulate matter, PM, and other pollutants than conventional vehicles that burn fossil fuels. These pollutants can cause respiratory diseases, cardiovascular diseases, and cancer. According to a study by the European Environment Agency, EEA, EVs can reduce air pollution by 30% in urban areas. Lower fuel consumption. EVs use less energy than conventional vehicles to travel the same distance. This can save money and reduce dependence on oil imports. According to a study by the U.S. Department of Energy, DOE, EVs can save up to 60% of fuel costs compared to gasoline cars. However, EVs also have some drawbacks compared to conventional vehicles, such as higher upfront cost. EVs are more expensive than conventional vehicles to buy and maintain. This is mainly due to the high cost of batteries, which account for about 30% of the total cost of an EV. The average price of a new EV in the U.S. in 2020 was $55,600, while the average price of a new gasoline car was $36,600. Limited range and charging time. EVs have a shorter driving range than conventional vehicles on a single charge. This can limit the travel options and convenience of EV users. The average range of a new EV in the US in 2020 was 250 miles, while the average range of a new gasoline car was 412 miles. Moreover, EVs take longer to recharge than conventional vehicles to refuel. The average charging time of a new EV in the US in 2020 was 8 hours, while the average refueling time of a new gasoline car was 5 minutes. Performance and reliability issues. EVs may have lower performance and reliability than conventional vehicles in some conditions. For example, EVs may lose battery capacity and range in extreme temperatures, high altitudes, or heavy loads. EVs may also face technical problems or failures due to software glitches, hardware defects, or cyber attacks. Now that we have a basic understanding of what EVs are and how they work, let's look at the first aspect of their dark side, their environmental impact. How green and clean are EVs really? How do they affect the environment from cradle to grave? One of the main sources of environmental impact of EVs is their battery production. Batteries are essential for storing and delivering electricity to power EVs. However, batteries also have a high environmental cost, as they require mining and processing of raw materials such as lithium, cobalt, nickel, etc. These raw materials are scarce and unevenly distributed around the world. Most of them are found in developing countries such as China, Congo, Chile, Argentina, etc. The extraction and processing of these raw materials can cause environmental damage, human rights violations, and geopolitical conflicts. For example, environmental damage. The mining and processing of raw materials for batteries can cause land degradation, water pollution, air pollution, greenhouse gas emissions, biodiversity loss, etc. According to a study by Transport and Environment, TAND, the production of batteries for 1 million EVs can result in 250 million tons of CO2 emissions over their lifetime. Human rights violations. The mining and processing of raw materials for batteries can involve child labor, forced labor, health hazards. Human rights violations. The mining and processing of raw materials for batteries can involve child labor, forced labor, health hazards, safety risks, low wages, poor working conditions, etc. According to a report by Amnesty International, more than 40,000 children work in cobalt mines in Congo, where they face physical abuse, exposure to toxic substances, and risk of accidents. Geopolitical conflicts. The mining and processing of raw materials for batteries can create tensions and disputes among countries that produce, consume, or transit them. For example, China controls more than 60% of the global supply of lithium and cobalt, which gives it a strategic advantage and leverage over other countries. China has also been accused of using its influence to secure access to raw materials in Africa and Latin America. Another source of environmental impact of EVs is their battery disposal. Batteries have a limited lifespan and need to be replaced or recycled after a certain period of time. However, battery disposal or recycling poses challenges and risks for the environment and human health. For example, challenges. The disposal or recycling of batteries is complex and costly, as it requires separating and recovering the different materials and components of the batteries. Moreover, there is a lack of infrastructure and regulation for battery disposal or recycling in many countries. According to a study by the International Energy Agency, IEA, only 5% of lithium-ion batteries are recycled globally. Risks. The disposal or recycling of batteries can cause environmental damage, human health hazards, and safety issues. For example, batteries can leak toxic substances such as acids, metals, or electrolytes into the soil or water. Batteries can also catch fire or explode due to overheating, short-circuiting, or improper handling. A third source of environmental impact of EVs is their electricity generation. Electricity is the main energy source for charging EVs. However, electricity may not be as clean as it seems, as it may come from fossil fuels or other non-renewable sources that emit greenhouse gases and pollutants. For example, fossil fuels. The majority of electricity in the world is generated from fossil fuels such as coal, oil, or natural gas. These fossil fuels are non-renewable and contribute to global warming and climate change. According to a study by the Union of Concerned Scientists, UCS, the average EV in the US emits 50% less CO2 than the average gasoline car over its lifetime. However, this depends on the electricity mix of each region. In some regions where electricity is mostly generated from coal, EVs may emit more CO2 than gasoline cars. Non-renewable sources. Some electricity may come from other non-renewable sources such as nuclear power or large-scale hydropower. These sources may have lower greenhouse gas emissions than fossil fuels, but they also have other environmental and social impacts. For example, nuclear power produces radioactive waste that needs to be safely stored and managed for thousands of years. Large-scale hydropower disrupts natural ecosystems and displaces local communities. Now that we have seen the environmental impact of EVs, let's look at the second aspect of their dark side, their social impact. How accessible and equitable are EVs really? How do they affect different groups of people in society? One of the main sources of social impact of EVs is their cost. EVs are more expensive than conventional vehicles to buy and maintain. This can make them unaffordable for many people. Cost. EVs are more expensive than conventional vehicles to buy and maintain. This can make them unaffordable for many people, especially in developing countries. According to a report by Bloomberg NEF, the global average price of a new EV in 2020 was $40,000, while the global average price of a new gasoline car was $20,000. Moreover, EVs require higher maintenance costs than conventional vehicles, such as battery replacement or charging fees. Infrastructure. EVs require adequate and reliable infrastructure to operate and charge. However, many countries lack sufficient and accessible infrastructure for EVs, such as charging stations, grid capacity, and maintenance facilities. According to a report by the International Renewable Energy Agency, IRENA, there were only 7.3 million charging points for 10.2 million EVs worldwide in 2020. Moreover, many charging points are concentrated in urban areas, leaving rural areas underserved. Incentives. EVs benefit from various incentives that encourage their adoption and use. These incentives include subsidies, tax breaks, regulations, etc. However, these incentives may create unfair advantages or disadvantages for different groups of consumers, producers, or workers. For example, subsidies and tax breaks for EVs may favor wealthy or urban consumers who can afford them, while excluding poor or rural consumers who cannot. Regulations such as emission standards or fuel economy standards may favor EV producers who can meet them, while penalizing conventional vehicle producers who cannot. Workers in the fossil fuel or automotive industries may lose their jobs or income due to the transition to EVs. In conclusion, EVs are not as green and clean as they claim to be. They have a dark side that involves environmental damage, human rights violations, geopolitical conflicts, social inequality, and ethical dilemmas. These issues need to be addressed and resolved in order to make EVs more sustainable and inclusive. So what can we do about it? Here are some possible suggestions. We can support the development and deployment of renewable energy sources such as solar power or wind power that can provide clean and cheap electricity for EVs. We can support the research and innovation of battery technologies that can reduce the environmental and social impacts of battery production and disposal. We can support the creation and improvement of infrastructure for EVs that can increase their availability and convenience for all people. We can support the design and implementation of incentives for EVs that can balance the interests and needs of different groups of consumers, producers, or workers. By doing these things, we can make EVs more eco-friendly and equitable, and enjoy their benefits without compromising their costs. Thank you for watching this video. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos on environmental topics. Also, don't forget to leave your comments and questions below. See you next time.